Hi, I'm Iwan Fox and welcome to the latest 4BR Review podcast, where I'm joined by my colleague Chris Thomas to look forward to the forthcoming series of regional championship events, as well as provide you with some of our review recommendations on latest releases, events, books and even LPs. The 2026 Regional Championships kick off in Blackpool this Sunday with 75 Northwest bands looking to claim their invitations to head to Cheltenham and London later in the year. It's followed by Yorkshire, the Midlands and Scotland on the 7th and the 8th of March in Huddersfield, Bedworth and Perth respectively, whilst the following weekend it will be the turn for bands from Wales in Swansea and the west of England in Torquay, as well as the Midlands second section back in Bedworth. It's all rounded off on the 21st and the 22nd of March in Durham and Stevenage, with the competitors in the north of England and London and southern counties. Lots to get through as usual then in the next hour or so, and as always your views and opinions are key, so please be part of the live discussion by posting your comments in the YouTube comments box, which will appear as if by magic on the bottom of the screen. Well, it's back to my old mucker. Chris, welcome back again after our little break. And it's that time of year again when the focus of band's rehearsals' attention is on a very singular purpose: getting to Cheltenham Racecourse or the Royal Albert Hall. Yep. Total numbers we think are up just this year, round about the 480 band mark, taken in the various stages where they will be performing across the country, although the actual structure of the number of the bands in each section remains frustratingly static. So, something to look forward to over the next month or so as the regional championships, there they are in all their glory, start to take place.
Yeah, evening, Ewan. Yes, that time of year again, isn't it? Excitement around the band rooms of the country as we approach the regionals, and interesting statistics there that you mentioned, because we do seem to have found, and I'm going to take the positives from this, Ewan, because we do seem to have found a level of stability in terms of the band numbers now from year to year at the regional contest, don't we? I think we're a little bit up on fourth section bands this year, which I think we hope to be, and was obviously the intention of giving the fourth section bands Indian Summer to play, which I think is being relished by those bands. But I think that stability of numbers across the sections that we seem to have settled into, I think in these difficult times we should take the positives from that.
I think, it's 476 bands took part in 2024, 478 bands took part last year. We're still waiting for the final number in Wales. We understand it may be around the same, maybe one or two fewer, but that would bring us round about 480 in total. But I think you were right. I think there are 5 extra bands in total in the fourth section. You can say that they wanted more, and the aim for getting Indian Summer played was to try and get many more bands in. But there are a number of factors still at play there, but at least it hasn't gone down in that section. And as I say, you've got to say it's a remarkable endorsement of what we do as a hobby that we still get 480 bands able to take the stage around the country. That's still something really to be proud of.
Yeah, it is absolutely, and it's something that we should justly be proud of. And as I said, that stability, is a good thing. We know what the challenges of the times are. We know the difficulties with players, with finances, with the youth system, all sorts of things that contribute to what banding is in the modern age. But again, I think we should really take the positives from that. And I think coming back to the fourth section, it may only be 5 bands, but that's 5 bands that we didn't have last year. So let's rejoice in that fact.
I think the key is to try and build from that. It are fragile indeed. Foundations. As I say, on the flip side of that is that the structure itself is frustratingly static as well. And that's where possibly for the longer term that there needs to be those changes put in place. But I think I'm looking at some of the figures that I've got. There were 86 bands in the championship section. Last year, it's roughly about the same number. This year, 88 bands in the fourth section. So there's got roughly about 86 and around about 90 odd in the fourth section this year. So it's been a slight change. We'd like that to be a much more pyramid in structure. Of course, everybody would like that part of it there. But it does. At least there are signs that foundation isn't being eroded too quickly away, and there's something really to build on. But the key, as you say, is getting those test pieces where the bands really want to play it and actually think it's
yeah.
worth their while musically to
Yes.
take part in the event. So that that is something really that can be built on.
Yeah, and I think we've got to, we've got to hand it to the selection panel here, Ewan. We've got a really good range of test pieces across the sections this year, I think, and building. You talk about the structure. You and I could talk all night about the problems between the championship section and the first section and the imbalance that we've talked about many times before, which we could probably devote a whole podcast to talking about again, quite honestly. That is something that's ongoing, and I think that it is something that sooner or later has to be addressed, because there is clearly a serious imbalance between the championship and the first section. Lower down, it's a little bit different, and the good intentions of bringing bands into the fourth section and building from the bottom. Again, we've got to endorse that, but that's not to say that there aren't areas that can be looked at and improved. And for me, the big one is that championship first section equation.
It was interesting. Tim Newton did a great article, and it appeared on 4Barsrest, where he looked back over the 80 years of the national championships. 1945, I think, was the first year where it was really properly organised, or professionally organised, you could say, through the Daily Herald newspaper. Whatever happened to that one, eh? But on the strange way, it was 60 years ago where the thing almost came crashing down, and it wasn't from anything other than that the newspaper didn't really want to put any more money into it, and the bands themselves were taking everything for granted. Organisers were getting older, almost like it was a history of repeating itself as we go along, and the thing nearly fell to pieces, and it needed somebody really to provide that catalyst to safeguard it for the next 60 years. And there's been changes since 1992, I think, was when the first section came in, etc. So again, the circle is just about turned around, and you think, time for another one of those really restructurings to help us for the next 60 years forward. Yeah,
and I think that's absolutely right. It's easy to forget that history has a funny habit of repeating itself, doesn't it? You can look at any form of history, whether it be political history or whatever. There are precedents for virtually everything that goes on, and I think we tend to think in these challenging times, as we call them in banding and music general, the arts generally, that it's a new experience, that it's the first time we've been in situations like this. It isn't. We've had challenges before, as you said. The wheel turns, and history has a habit of repeating itself. So I think you have to give some context to everything and say, look, there have been issues before, we've come through them. You rebuild and you look at different ways of improving things. And
variations of the same themes, I think.
Very much so.
Come through history in that part of it. And one of the variations that hasn't, I'm going to say does need changing, but for the best possible reasons, is that the area organisers themselves, they have defied age over the years. They are fantastic.
Would Mr. Morris agree with you with that?
Yeah, well, I don't know. He must be injected with monkey glands or something to keep himself going. But when you look around the areas and you see this familiar faces who have been running area championships for so many years, and that's the other side of it. I think bands think, everybody put the changes in for our benefit. They've got to really look at themselves to think, how can we play a part in that? And volunteering and putting yourself forward to be represented, and there are two strands to that, basically, because if you're not going to get represented, you haven't got a say in any potential change that's going to take place. So you can't assume that somebody else will do it for you. So the bands themselves have got to step up the mark. And as I say, I am quite sure there are a number of the volunteers, the number of the contest organisers who would love to have a very quiet weekend over the next month or so, sitting back and relaxing and listening to the bands, instead of being bombarded by questions and complaints and challenges and whatever, and what happened to the result and all that sort of stuff there. The one thing I think both of us would agree on is bear that in mind, because they do such a fantastic job. And even if it isn't your best a day on contest stage, please do not take it out on those people. They do a wonderful job, and without them, we don't have anything at all.
There's a remarkable team of volunteers behind all of this, Ewan, as you and I well know, and hopefully all the bands know as well. There have been one or two incidents in recent years that have really been quite ugly, quite unpleasant, and totally unnecessary and inappropriate. And let's hope we're not going to see any repeats of that this year. I mean, I speak for myself in the Midlands when I look at Leslie Bentley, who runs the Midlands contest. I mean, total dedication, long-standing commitment, and these people are unsung heroes, Ewan, aren't they? I mean,
it is. You've got Sue Oldfield down in the west of England. You've got Tony up in the north of England. You've got the people, Kevin Williams in London, etc. They're all there doing a wonderful job.
They do an incredible job.
Even I do an incredible job, although I put the numbers wrong on the stage last year. I was put in charge of putting the numbers of the draw and the programme numbers on the stage. There were 3 bands in the 4 section. I got them the wrong way round. So
can't get the staff, you see.
Yeah, I volunteer. I'm not going to volunteer again, but I'll do my little bit of helping hand. One of the other things I think that has maybe helped as well sustain the numbers is the rule changes which have come in.
Yeah,
and one of them is, there we are, there's the rule book, and there's the picture of
the big
very
red
nicely
book.
the little red book. There we are.
Yeah.
Philip Morris's little red book that is there. And the rule changes that come in with the borrowing of players, and bands can now borrow players in sections 1, 2, 3 and 4. I think they're allowed to borrow up to 2 players regardless of a reason. And that I think has really helped, and it's that little progressive steps which bands may, sometimes they forget about, that somebody is thinking about trying to make sure that the bands can still turn up to these contests, as long as it's not abused. And I think that is the important part of it with regards to that. Those things are starting to help, and I think congratulations again. The people who are putting them in place start to make those little progressive steps to safeguard the future.
And they're not easy decisions. I mean, all of these things will attract a certain degree of controversy from certain quarters, certain bands, certain individuals. It's not an easy thing to make these decisions and put them in place. I have to say, I totally endorse the changes that you've just outlined. I think they can only help, particularly with lower section bands. There needs to be just that little bit of flexibility, and I think the rule changes give us that without allowing the opportunity for bands to take it too far. So as you say, it's important that it's not abused. This is there for the benefit of the bands, being able to get bands to the contest, be able to build bands and actually put together a band that can perform on the day. And I think it's to be wholeheartedly applauded in terms of what they've done.
Well, our first person to come in and to ask the question, of course, is Tim himself.
Talk of the devil.
Talk of the man who actually...
Evening, Tim.
Yeah, wonderful that he did the great article for me on 4Barsrest, and he says, surely time for the 4th section to be made more open by allowing bands to play more than 25 players, open adjudication and own choice. It might encourage greater participation.
Wow.
He's pushed himself forward to something we want to just cover a little bit later on. We will come back to that, Tim. You're a soothsayer, my boy.
It's an important point. It
is. But first things first, as we say, the competition starts in Blackpool this weekend, and we're not going to be going to Blackpool too often over the next 6 months, but there we are, the famous Winter Gardens. Just to remind people that over the next few weeks, as we said, we'll be going to Yorkshire, Midlands and Scotland, Wales, the West, the North, London and the Southern counties. And just to let people know as well, the qualification process, because that actually changed, I think, last year, they changed when it went back with the 4 bands in the championship section, up to including 6 bands. 1 band will qualify. I think that may only apply to 1 section. I think that may be the 4th section in Wales for this year. 7 to 14 bands entered, 2 bands qualify, 15 to 19, 3 bands qualify. There used to be many years ago, I remember going to the London and Southern counties where there were like 35 bands in the 4th section. Those days are long gone, I'm afraid. But if there are more than 20 bands, 4 qualify, more than 25 bands, 5 bands qualify. None will be in these circumstances. So it's either going to be most places 2 or 3 bands, as well as the 4 bands that pre-qualified for the championship section in the national finals. So Yet another person that's come straight back on, Malcolm Wood, of course. Here we go. There are many things that could be done. Give each section own choice, but a time length or a specific composer that also may attract more bands. You're all thinking ahead of us slightly here, gents, because we are going to come on to that there. There was another point that Malcolm made when I was talking to him previously, is that he said that it was a good idea that talking about asking for volunteers. What happens in places like Norway, I think in Switzerland as well, is that each band actually provides a non-player member as a volunteer to help with the administration. Now, it's if you've got a nationally organised body, they can do it much better. Yeah. There are potential challenges because you've got safeguarding issues, etc., and health and safety and all that sort of stuff. But if people can just actually put themselves forward, it may be just be opening doors. It may just be selling programs. It may be, moving the stands on stage or sweeping. It doesn't make any difference. If you're there and you want to help, put your hand up. And I'm quite sure they'll be bitten off by one of the organisers. So that really is something as well.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think that there are all sorts of things like that can be experimented with, and as you say, it doesn't have to be something difficult. I mean, literally, a stagehand, etc. Anything like that helps would be a good thing. So yeah, I would completely endorse that. I think that's actually a very good idea.
It is. So there we go. So there we are. Chris, me and you be on stage with our yellow bibs and a couple of pens in the top pocket.
A high vis jacket.
I've always wanted to wear high vis jackets. I want to do that. So we do that. That's a great job. Anyway, on the flip side of that, as something like Tim and both Malcolm has said with regards to that, I was recently at the Norwegian Championships in Bergen. In Norway, and there we are, and it's Bergen, and that is actually an exclamation mark, not a question mark. I was actually there in Bergen with that one, but there are things, personally, I think that we can still learn from the Norwegians. If you flip it around many years ago, the Norwegians learned everything from British banding, took it on board and have moulded it and done it.
And took it in their own direction. Yeah,
they have, and especially with regards to the structuring of their sections, but also the point that Malcolm made a little bit earlier on there. It's open adjudication in every section, even in the elite section, with the exception of the set work. The set work is closed adjudication, the own choice is open. All the other sections are open adjudication. Yeah. They don't mind that whatsoever. There is none of this, this is tradition or, unconscious bias, which is the, amazingly silly thing to think about in anything if you've got really good adjudicators. All that sort of stuff. So it's all open adjudication. It's all inclusive. Especially in the fifth and the fourth section there, where people are introducing the bands, introducing individual players, grandfathers and grandchildren playing in the same bands together. There is such an open atmosphere about it. When it comes to the music, let the bands play whatever. It's a good idea about the time limit imposed there. And if they want to play Paganini variations in the fifth section, or if they want to play Ordivi Media Nocte in the third section, let them do it, because if they're going to enjoy the music, it makes no difference come the results.
Coming back to Norway, Ewan, we know some of the adventurous choices of the lower section bands in Bergen, don't we? And sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't, but that's the chance that they take. But you know what? It makes for an entertaining contest, doesn't it? It makes for an engaging contest, bands that they either take risks or they play safe, but it works, and it actually adds to the spectacle for the audience as well.
And I think
that can't be a bad thing.
And I think the other thing as well, they understand the ethos of why they're doing it. They're there to enjoy themselves. If they win, great, and they do have a great time afterwards in the after party.
They certainly do. They certainly do.
Some of the ones who have the best parties are the ones who normally come way down the list of the results. It's not always the bands that actually win. That is the flip side of what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's the ethos, Ewan, isn't it? And I think there's so many issues here. There's so many issues, but trust sits at the very front of it. We have to trust our judges, and we have to get away from the conspiracy theories and all the rest of it. In Norway, they seem to do that. They don't have those same issues that we do here. And it's a clever idea, I think, to have the closed adjudication on the set test and open adjudication on the own choice in the elite section in Norway. I mean, let's be absolutely honest about it. I cannot conceive that there aren't adjudicators in a closed box on an own choice contest that don't know some of the bands because of the pieces that they're playing. So why keep them in a box? It's a pointless exercise. So I totally agree that having that system of closed on the set and open on the own choice, I actually think that potentially could work very well. I think own choices lower down the sections in the regionals, I think could also work very well. And I think there's no reason why that can't be undertaken 1 year just as an experiment, as an exercise in seeing whether it works. I think you could put a time limit on the length of the piece, as Malcolm says, probably a little bit limiting to limit it to one composer. I think that's probably taking it a little bit too far, but certainly you could limit the time. And I think it just opens up so many possibilities and makes the contest so much more engaging for those listening in the audience.
It is. Things are moving out. It may sound as if we're knocking it, but we're not. Things are moving in the right direction. And talking of which, then, we go on to the music, which was chosen, of course, by the Capital Music Panel, which comprises Philip Morris and Tim Jones from Capital. They're the chairperson and the administrator. They do the organising of things, making sure that test pieces they do not vote, they do not decide on what the test pieces are. Then there's an experienced panel: Dr. Robert Childs, Sandy Smith, John Mains, Andrea Price, and following the death of Duncan Beckley, there's a recent new appointment of Dr. Stephen Cobb. Now, Stephen Cobb wasn't involved with regards to the area test pieces this year, but I think he's been involved with the choice for the national finals. So you've got an experienced team from there. You've got people who've actually written for the medium. You've got people who've arranged for the medium. You've got people who conducted for the medium, etc. So they've done some really good choices. And the pieces that they picked for the regional champions this year, we had Elgar Variations by Martin Ellaby, Variations on Vos Lebet by Andrew Wainwright, Philip Harper's 23,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Three Howarth Impressions by Gordon Langford and Eric Ball's Indian Summer. And the first of those, there's the man, it's a bit of a giveaway there, was Elgar Variations by Martin Ellaby. That isn't Martin Ellaby, that's Mr. Elgar himself. Written in 2007 for the European Championships in Birmingham, it marked the 150th anniversary of his birth. Very interesting piece, and make it a welcome return, I think, since the time. It hasn't been used a lot, and I think it's going to be an interesting and engaging choice both for the performers and the audience.
Yeah, I can't believe it was 19 years ago. I remember that contest very well in Symphony Hall. I can't believe it was 19 years ago that Martin wrote that piece. But I think the lovely thing about this piece, first of all, it's beautifully crafted, as you would expect from Martin Ellaby. It's beautifully written, beautifully scored, beautifully crafted, and very clever in terms of how it tests the bands. That's the first thing. I think the second thing is that it's not a set of variations on a theme. There's no enigma to this. This is a kind of stylistic exercise capturing different styles and different facets of Elgar as composer and human being, really.
Interesting bloke, Elgar.
Very interesting.
There was contradictions in his life, wasn't there?
There was a man that went through a lot of conflict in his personal life, I think, and a man who arguably some would say had quite a big chip on his shoulder, Ewan, actually. But
big chip on his shoulder. He had a king head with the 8th blooming potato on his shoulder. I think any man who could do a football chant for Wolverhampton Wanderers and then do Pomp and Circumstances, that takes it there. I've spoken to Martin Ellaby just to find out a little bit more about the piece and just a reminder or whatever. And he's quite upfront about it. It's a piece about character and style. It's a little bit like Michael Sheen when he inhabits when it does a role, when he does Frost Nixon, or when he did Kenneth Williams, or when he does that. You actually know that it's him doing it because he doesn't try to mimic. He's not, but it's not a pastiche. It's not a mimic of it. But he imbues the character. That's what it is, and that's what makes it so believable. And I think it's the same with this part of it as well. He's very cleverly almost just give the odd nod here, syncopated something else in a different way. So all the character is there, all the style is there, all the underpinnings are there. But it's all Martin Ellaby. It's not Edward Elgar.
It's a lovely piece of writing, and just the way that it flows, the way that he knits everything together. It's a craftsman-like piece, and it's a good choice, Ewan. As you said, it's not been done that much since it was written for the Europeans all those years ago. So it's familiar, but at the same time not greatly well known. What I'm hearing is that the bands are thoroughly enjoying playing it. As I said, it's a highly melodic piece, isn't it?
It is.
It's a pleasurable piece to listen to, and I think it will make for some good championship section contests around the country. Take some playing as well. Let's not let's not. There's no doubt about that. It's going to take a good band.
There's an elegance about it. There is an elegance about the writing. There's an elegance about the style of the writing, which I think nowadays bands have possibly lost the art of elegance when it comes to playing. It's always a little bit crash bang wallop, very exciting. But sometimes,
and it's quite an old-fashioned piece in that respect, isn't it? It takes old-fashioned qualities that, as you say, we sometimes neglect these days. And I think that's one of the clever things about it, is that it's going to take a conductor that knows how to draw the nuance and the subtleties from the music, and there are plenty of those nuances there if you look for them. Yeah,
and I think that's the key: nuance, subtlety, and refinement, rather than heart on sleeve, saccharine covered passion, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, talking about variations, and certainly something which is a variation on a theme is Was La Bête by Andrew Wainwright, which I heard at there's Andrew, I heard at the Dutch National Championships a couple of years ago, where it was played in the second section. Again, talking about craftsmanship, this is a so well crafted piece.
It is.
It's based on the German chorale, "O Worship the Lord in the Beauty Holiness," made up of 5 contrasting sections, but so cleverly put together so that they don't feel bolted together. There's almost a line that you can follow all the way through from beginning to end. That takes some doing in a theme and variations, especially with only 5 of them to do. But he's put it together so well. Technically difficult.
Yes.
But again, melodic and tonal and enjoyable for the listener and the performer to play. Yeah,
and again, I'm hearing there's been a lot of comments on Facebook from the first section bands. I mean, they're obviously really enjoying getting to grips with this piece, and I think the reason they're enjoying getting to grips with it is that it's a good piece of music, as you say. It's well written. There's probably something that's akin to the Martin Ellerby piece, really, in terms of the way that it's crafted, the way that it's structured, and the elegance, coming back to that word, of the way that Andrew weaves everything together. And I think, and I hope Andrew won't mind me saying this, but I think he's actually a very underrated composer. I mean, I actually think
indeed,
this is a fine piece of writing. And as a test piece, it works, but it works musically as well. So again, very similar to the Martin Ellerby piece, in that I think it will make for enjoyable listening for those people that are sitting in the hall on the day.
And no enigma with it. The TB911, which is in the brackets below the title, I wonder what that was for. It's very simple. It's the number of the hymn found in the Salvation Army hymn book. So any person who thought there was a hidden meaning there, it isn't.
And it makes perfect sense when we know that Andrew's a Salvationist. So
so everybody had maybe thinking something much more deeper than that, but it isn't. That's what it actually is. So that's a fine piece, and I think, as you say, a good test of bands who've got that ambition, if they want to go from there, then on to the likes of Elgar variations, and then when it comes to the national final, something much bigger indeed. Talking about pieces then that really have colour and excitement and a narrative led rather than variation led is Philip Harper's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Inspired, there's Philip Harper, pointed in the right direction, and he is doing it because it's a really cracking take on the Jules Verne science fiction story. Although if we ever read Jules Verne, it's a bit like a 19th century eco-terrorist he is. He's not a great... Captain Nemo isn't a pleasant bloke.
He's not. He's a nasty bit of work, actually.
He is a nasty little piece of work.
He's a nasty bit of work, yeah.
Whoever, I think in the film, is it James Mason? And he's there.
Yes, it is James Mason,
He's playing Toccata in D minor on the organ, isn't he? On the Nautilus. He is. I think the word's dark and brooding. the way to do that.
Yeah.
Philip Harper.
Actually, James Mason could do dark and brooding very well, actually.
Oh, okay,
So,
great. One of my favourite actors, James Mason, I have to say there. Now, and this one really is, and Philip Harper knows how to draw narrative forward with what he's writing. If you think of his test pieces, of course, Explorers on the Moon, etc., even at the very top level, you can feel he knew where the story has got to go. So the audience is drawn along with the music, and he does exactly that. It's in 5 little sections. The Nautilus, of course, which was the fantastical submarine. The Coral Kingdom, where it's a bit like Debussy's Sunken Cathedral, whatever, that type of music all underneath there.
Yeah,
There's a squid attack. That's not the Japanese game. That's actually a giant squid. Then there's Captain Nemo himself. There we are, the dark man himself, who's
loner and an eccentric.
Yeah, a loner and eccentric. This bit sounds a bit like me in that respect. And finally, the maelstrom, which is a lovely word which you don't hear very often nowadays. Do it there, but again, Philip Harper's brought it all together. I know there's been some questions about the percussion with regards to this. I think there's a water gong which is going to be used, I think, in all sections except possibly one of the areas. I'm not 100% certain with regards to that. But again, Philip Harper, he does great stuff with moods, he does great stuff with colour, he does great stuff with balance, and he understands percussion right in. Stick it all together, you got a fantastic piece. If you play it well, you're going to be heading to Cheltenham.
Yeah, you've summed it up perfectly. I don't think I can add anything to that, really. It's, one of the interesting things is that it's a very different piece. I mean, the Ellaby and Andrew Wainwright's piece are essentially abstract pieces. This is the opposite of that. I mean, and this is what Philip does so well, as you say, in pieces like Explorers on the Moon. Philip loves his narratives, but he really knows how to work it into the music and how to draw you forward, as you say. And he's, well, as we all know, he's a master of colour and scoring and effects in his scores. And again, it's a piece that I just think the bands will take a lot from. As a second section test piece, it's still difficult. You have to find your way around the changing moods of those 5 sections, and they are very different, and there's a lot of different styles and again nuances to work your way through, but so much drama and so much color that can be extracted from this score. So again, I think one that the bands will enjoy and the audiences will enjoy in equal measure.
Talking of color, excitement, drama and darkness, 3 Howarth Impressions by Gordon Langford. Now, we'll have to put a disclaimer out. This is the Howarth Impressions. This is nothing, although it is to do with the Brontes and a little bit of Wuthering Heights, this is nothing to do with Margot Robbie and a Bodice Ripper film that's just come out, isn't it? With Heathcliff, who seems to be exceptionally white and tall instead of short and dark, which he's in there. Actually,
it's not had the best of reviews, Ewan, so I hope you haven't been
quite
to
rightly too. It's a book about the abuse of power rather than, teenage love. And that's the one thing Margot Robbie isn't. She isn't a teenager. That's the other bit. Neither is it Kate Bush either. So for those of us of an older age,
she was when she sang the song.
It was, but this is to do with that gentleman on the screen.
What an artist that man was.
There is a man who could write a tune, Gordon Langford. But this is especially the first the opening section, there is a dark broodiness.
There is
about this. He really does set the scene. And talking about what Philip Harper does to get make atmosphere with that, Gordon Langford, blimey, Riley, he knew how to do it straight away. I always think that halfway through he's going to go into the rise and fall of Reginald Perrin, but that's something else. But
I remember when this piece first, when he wrote it, and it came out on one of those very early Black Dyke digital LPs. Do you remember that? I think it was the Chandos disc. Yeah. And it was in those very early days of digital LPs coming out. So it was one of those early Black Dyke discs in that form. And I love this piece. I just think it's a fabulous piece. There's so much colour, there's so much atmosphere. And Gordon Langford, what a craftsman. I mean, what an absolute craftsman. Now, there's a man, and we've talked about Langford before, but there's a man who knew how to craft a piece of music, who knew how to find the shape of a melody and of a movement. So skillfully scored, so much subtlety, and again, that word of nuance of colour. But utterly engaging music to listen to, beautifully melodic. It's a cracking piece, and I really think the third section bands will hopefully be getting a lot out of it, because again, there's a lot to be got out of this score.
The caveat, I think, on the opposite side of that, I know Sandy Smith has put his hand up to this and explained it. Of course, there was only a short score, which I think was in concert pitch, which was provided.
Yes.
And it's I think Colin Varley and somebody else has done, been very, very helpful and expanded into to try and get rid of the errata, etc. The piece has been around a long time, so but it's difficult for bands, especially at third section level, to where you're looking forward to play a piece and then you've got to work your way through things that are wrong with it, etc. It's a little bit more foresight maybe would have done that for it, both on both parties, I think. But it's just a reminder that sometimes some of the older scores, and this applies, I think, as well to the Eric Ball Indian Summer, that it's worth revisiting. If you are, just before you make the final press the button, that's the choice we're going to be made, just to make sure those things are actually done in place. I think it's taken a little bit of gloss and enjoyment off for a lot of people, but the music when it comes up will make up for it, I think.
It takes nothing away from the quality of the score, but as you said, that's about foresight and about looking at it sensibly before the final choice is made, and saying, look, is this right? You can't inflict that kind of thing on any band, whether it be a lower section band or a championship section band. So that is a shame, but it takes nothing away from the quality of the music.
I think the quality of the music will win through, but it's just one of those little tick box things really to put in place possibly for next time. And I think that applies really with the fourth section choice. I know we've spoken about Eric Ball's Indian Summer. It is, and let's say it, there it is, Eric Ball's signature there on a piece of music in Tredegar's band room. That is when I was a kid. He wrote it. I wasn't playing solo cornet in those days. I was on third cornet, but there we are. But it is music of its time. We know that. We've explained that previously from that. That disclaimer, as long as it's explained to people, I think I think people are okay with it. Although I have to say, it's not, for me, it's not great Eric Ball music. It's not one of his great pieces in any way, shape or form. But bearing in mind, strangely, at the time I was doing a little bit of research on this, is that in 1946 he wrote a piece called Akhenaten, about the Egyptian pharaoh. And if you ever listen to that, it's a bit like Wilson, Keppel and Eddie. And you're going to tell me you don't know Wilson, Keppel and Eddie are now. Anyways, one for the kids here. Have we ever seen the famous Pharaoh sand dance? Have we ever seen those ones? There's parts of it like that. But again, it's very much music of its time. But at the same time, he wrote a piece called Conchita, which is a cornet solo. And again, music very much of its time and of its assumptions. But at the same time, he wrote 4 preludes and Petite Suite de Ballet. All around the same time. So it's difficult to
I think, in all honesty, Ewan, I think we've, between you and I and various other commentators, I think we've talked the racial stereotype side of it to death. I really don't think that needs to be or should be discussed any further. Let's move on to the music. And the reality is that I agree with you. It's not actually the best work of Eric Ball. It's not, but people have affection for the piece. And I think a lot of that is historical. I think a lot of people, I did myself. You played it obviously when you were young at Tred. I can remember playing it very, very early on I think it was in a school band I played for, when we used to have Days of Brass every year in Coventry, and I think those affectionate memories of the piece that go back to your days as a young player mean that you tend to look at it a little through rose-tinted specs, maybe. But hey, that doesn't matter, Ewan, does it? It
doesn't matter at all. But again, as we say, it was done for a purpose. You can have a look at it and maybe say there's other find more modern music out there, whatever, that can be brought back in as well. But if it gets more people playing, I think that's possibly the positive thing that is going to come out of it. Now, talking about positive things, although people will be looking at us and hoping that we're not going to give it, what about our coverage and Kiss of Death selections?
Oh, God.
Now, first things first, with regards to the coverage, I want to tell people straight away, we will be attending each of the championship events. However, we will only be providing live band-by-band coverage of the championship section contests. And I want to be very clear with regards to this. This is because my personal priorities have changed considerably over the last few years, and there's only so much that I can and wish to do over the next 4 weeks. So that's the reason for that. If you wish to complain or you want to say anything, please come up and see me at any time. Come and see me. I'm the owner of 4Barsrest, and I'll explain the situation to you. But that's what we will be doing. You will be getting the draws, you get the results. We'll be getting as many updates as we possibly can. But the live band-by-band coverage will be done for the championship section only. Now, Kiss of Death time, I'm afraid to say then, following on from that bad news.
Here we
go. We go then. Right, so we've asked, we're going to do it for each other. We're going to challenge each other to pick one band from, you've got 4 areas, I got 4 areas. Pick one band in each of the sections. So these are the bands that you've got to look out for, and there's a reason for each of them. So first of all, London and the Southern Counties, Chris, these are your choices. So you've gone for Zone 1 Brass in the championship section. I wonder why.
Intriguing one, this UNA. Intriguing one. So who's conducting Zone 1? The one and only John Wilson.
As if by magic, there he appears. There we go.
What a coup for Zone 1 this is. What a coup. I mean, normally Richard Ward, who I think
fine conductor.
Fine conductor, fine trombonist, fine musician. I think unable to conduct them this year for some reason, and whether it's Richard that's been instrumental in getting John in to conduct Zone 1, I don't know. But wow, what a that's gonna be a fascinating performance. And
now we understand. I've heard that there's quite a few players on the circuit who have joined the band to play for him for Zone 1. I can guarantee you they'll all be in practice and all be looking at their parts, because Mr. Wilson has got a great reputation to making sure all his bands, string players will know this, that they are well prepared and can play their parts.
He's a taskmaster.
So don't turn up and just say, leave it with me, I'll be all right by the next time. They'll have to play well. You were quite right. I think that's going to be a fascinating fascinating performance.
Yeah.
On your own back door in the Midlands, you've gone for Sherland Welfare Band in the second section. So a great organisation.
Yeah, newly promoted to the second section from and conducted by an old mate of mine, Lyndon Cooper, who used to play at William Davis's when I was there many years ago. So a wily old campaigner is Lyndon, and has been doing really good things with Sherland. So first section, newly promoted from second section, playing in the first section at Bedworth. And a band, I think, and they've had a bit of a run out on Andrew Wainwright's piece, because they came third at the North Midlands contest just last weekend on it. So they've had a little bit of a competitive run out on the piece. Never a bad thing, running up to the end.
There we are then. So you've given an old friend a kiss of death there.
Lyndon, I apologise now. I really do. But
I've given you one to pick in Wales, and you've gone for Park and Dare, a band conducted by somebody I know, Debbie Griffiths. They've done so well over the last few years, and so they're in the first section, but a band I think that will be fancying their chances.
Yeah, well, a band, just Park and Dare have just got such a great history, haven't they? I mean, such a band with such a long, proud, illustrious history, and they've been through their ups and downs over the years. They've had periods that have been difficult, periods in the doldrums, periods that have been challenging. Derry has been really, really working well with the band in recent times. I think they had quite a reasonable result last weekend. Again, this is another band that have had a sort of not a performance of the area test piece in this case, but certainly a band that have been able to go and warm up on the contest stage before the areas, and I think got quite a creditable result at the Welsh Open.
Fifth, I think they were, off a number one draw.
So I'm going to say Park and Dare, band to watch out for. Again, Derry Griffiths, wily campaigner, knows what he's doing, and one to listen out for.
And in the north of England, you've gone into the fourth section to pick out, again, talking about a band with a great ethos, Tuit Community Band.
Yeah.
They're in the fourth section. So again, I think Tuit, I think they've invested in instruments, they've invested in players. The whole setup is fantastic. They're Martin Hall and his team. So, good luck to the Tuit Community Band. Don't blame us for it, because we're rooting for you in that fourth section. And then finally, your dark horse. Out of those areas, you've gone for Derwent Brass.
I have, and there are good reasons for that. I mean, I think Derwent, first of all, they're a remarkably enterprising band, and I think Jack Capstaff has been doing some great work with them. They've built a very, very close-knit band in terms of the players in the band, and they've built a core, a nucleus of very, very talented players, but players who are deeply committed to the band and its organisation. They've also signed a number of very, very high-quality players in recent times. They've been pushing on the door at the Midlands area for a few years now. Were third last year. Obviously, Gus and Desford qualified last year. Desford clearly have pre-qualified this year as reigning national champions. So there's a real opportunity in the Midlands, and I think Derwent are a band to really watch out for, a band on the up.
Well, that's your choices. I'm going to go quickly through mine. I've got the West of England, Scotland, North West, and Yorkshire. For the West of England, I'm going for Andover Town. The reason being, the conductor Ben Halstead. I've known him for a number of years, a really talented player. I think he's gone into the army. He's now doing a conducting course. Andover last won a prize in 2012. Got onto a podium. So it's long overdue, and I'm putting my mortgage on Ben Halstead in the West of England with Andover Town in the first section. I'm doing the same with Renfrew Burr in Scotland in the second section. Mark Good, again, does some great work, especially with youngsters. He's got a connection with the Riverside band, they call it, up there. But he's doing a grand job. So, Mark, my mortgage money is in your pocket up in Scotland. In the Northwest, I'm going for Vernon Building Society Poynton in the third section. A band that's had ups and downs and challenges and obstacles put in its way over so many years. Hopefully now they're back on the up. They're conducted by Joey Wong, who I saw conducting at the National Youth Brass Band of Great Britain Conductors Competition. Really impressive young conductor. Really impressive. He's got the enthusiasm, the passion. He's got a bit of charisma about him, and hopefully he's going to be the person who's going to bring VBS Poynton back into the prizes. I wish them well. My last one is in Yorkshire, which is the Queensbury Music Centre. They are the reigning Yorkshire champions. They came second at the national finals. Such an impressive band.
Quite a story with this band, Ewan, isn't there?
Yeah, I have to say they were very, very impressive indeed, and they make a lovely sound. Really do make it. Talking about balance and putting the basics together, they really do.
A band that have really emerged like a phoenix from the flames, haven't they?
It is. That's a television program that's from a long time ago. Phoenix from the Flames. And my dark horse out of all of those is going to be the Milnrow Band in the championship section in the Northwest. Looking forward to hearing them. Conducted by Chris Binns, who is doing a conducting course at there he is. Oh, Chris. He's doing a conducting course at the Royal Northern College of Music under Mark Heron, and he has changed his conducting style, and he is now a very fine orchestral conductor when you see him. But he really has. He understands brass band and he understands all the basics, but he understands the nuance and subtleties. I think Milnrow could be a little dark horse. So sorry, Chris, I'm going to put my 50p pocket money on you there. Now, for the last 12 minutes then, Jessica got plenty to get into. On to our reviews. We had a review programme, and what a review for two CDs. We've got two great performers. The first is a CD called Autumn or Bard by Hakan Hardenberger, the man himself on trumpet, and he is joined by Roland Pontinen on piano. Tell us a little bit about this one, because he's one heck of a player, isn't he, Hakan?
Oh, God. Well, yeah, I mean, the pianist Roland Pontinen is a long-term collaborator, really. I mean, a brilliant accompanist, but a brilliant concert pianist in his own right as well. But there's I think one of the wonderful things about this disc is that there's amazing the telepathy between Hakan Hardenberger and the accompanist. I mean, they just sound so natural together. And the artistry of Hakan Hardenberger, I mean, what a player. I mean, he's got to be probably in his early 60s now, Ewan, would you say? Something like that?
65,
sort of early to
Yeah.
mid-60s, still playing to a remarkable standard. I mean, you know, the stamina and the artistry of Hardenberger is just unbelievable. But there's a really fascinating range of repertoire on this disc as well. You've got pieces by Mark Anthony Turnage, H.K. Gruber.
Oh.
Quite an eccentric character is H.K. Gruber,
Yeah,
I think
they
it's
should
fair to say. There's a piece by pianist Roland Pontonen. There's Chopin. There's a really diverse range of music, all of which is played with that incredibly natural sense of artistry and musicianship that we expect from Hakan Hardenberger. So I've listened to this disc a couple of times now, and I'll be listening to it a lot more over the coming weeks, but it's really worth dipping into.
Yeah, that's on the BIS label. You can get it
Yeah.
through Presto Music. We'll be putting it on the 4Barsrest link so you can get it
Yeah.
from there. But yeah, what a player, I have to say. Can't get enough HK Gruber. That's what I say in my life. Can't get enough of him. And one person you can't get enough of, we did, the CD came out when we were at the Royal Northern College of Music, and that, of course, is the Hall of Healing.
Yeah.
And, of course, that is the wonderful Yasuaki Fukuhara with the Black Dyke Band. All I can say on this one is please buy it because it's wonderful playing. You won't get to actually see him perform, which is a real pity. But the performances themselves are absolutely wonderful indeed. He's actually playing the percussion concerto, as we said, the number one, for the Hall of Healing by Simon Dobson. There's a wonderful little piece, it really appealed to me, called Hard-Boiled Capitalism and the Day Mr. Friedman Noticed Google is a Verb. That's anyone that could bring Milton Friedman into it.
A simple little title.
It is. That's one that trips off the tongue, isn't it? But we have to say it's been out a little while. I know it's sold really well and deservedly so. Mr. Fukuhara is some
Well,
artist.
I still can't get the performance at the RNCM out of my mind at the end of January.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
that performance of Simon's percussion concerto that night was absolutely spellbinding, and if you know, that's as good a reason as you're ever going to get to buy this disc, quite honestly, because he's an astonishing performer.
Right then, that takes us quickly onto two books. One book, The Brass Band Story by Professor Trevor Herbert, is on Yale University Press, 352 pages long. It's going to be released on the 14th of July. It's going to be priced at £25 in hardback cover. We've known about this book for some time. It's taken them about 3 years.
It's been a long time in gestation, hasn't it?
I've been very, very fortunate, I have to say. They've sent me through the PDF of the book. Fascinating book. The way in which he writes with such clarity and focus, but there's that detachment of the academic about it. So he doesn't have this mystic, you know, we lay on it things that are absolutely brilliant about everything about the brass banding world and everything is legendary and iconic, whatever. He sweeps away all of that and gets to the nub of what this, you know, in effect, what the social and cultural essence of what brass banding is all about. It charts everything from prehistories and precursors to the Victorian origins of the brass band movement, the contesting, village life brass bands and their localities. There's a fascinating chapter on the pitch issue and why it mattered, why bands went from high pitch to low pitch. Goes into gender education and idiom adjustments, and then internationalization and its impact, all packed into 350 pages. I've been dipping in and out of it. It's fascinating to read. It's coming out in July. I would say to everybody, make sure, if you're interested in brass bands, make sure that you book you a copy for that. We'll be keeping you up to date with some details with regards to it on 4Barsrest. Now, our second book, we just about got enough time for this, is Orchestra, the LSO, A Century of Triumph and Turbulence by Richard Morrison. which was first published in 2004 to coincide with the centenary of the London Symphony Orchestra. Now, the reason for us picking this one, it was recommended to me. I think I had it, but never really read it some considerable time ago. Richard Morrison is the son of Don Morrison, I think, with the Hendon Band.
Hendon Band,
He's been the arts music critic of the Times, I think now for 25 years plus.
Many years.
And
Very
I have to say,
respected writer.
if you think brass bands have their problems when you're trying to get all 30 players together, put 80 odd players together, stick a maestro in front of them, stick demands of recordings and film scores, money especially, and on tours, etc. You have a fascinating story to tell. He does it. He's a wonderful writer. I have to say, again, he's got that clarity of the narrative line, which he draws the reader through. So you get everything from the early days of the LSO up to what he calls the glamorous years when you had Andre Previn there. The problems that they had when they went to the Barbican in the early 80s, dealing with the likes of Claudio Abbado, etc. The tensions within the orchestra, you get to hear from people like Maurice Murphy, Howard Snell, Dennis Wick. They all have their say within the book.
Yeah, and I think
and he paints a wonderful, vivid picture of what a professional orchestra, how it's run, and how it's like a living, breathing animal. It's a really, really fine book.
I think Howard Snell was quite involved with the management and the structure of the LSO.
Yeah, he was chairman, I think, for about
wasn't he?
7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
So if you get that one, I think you can still get it for about £5 on eBay. Sorry about that, Richard, but if you can't buy if you should buy a brand new copy, but I think you can get it on £5 on eBay. That gives us a couple of concerts just to touch on. The National Youth Brass Band Championships of Great Britain take place on Saturday the 28th of March at King Edward's School in Birmingham. If you go onto Brass Bands England's website, you will find out all the details there. Tickets are now on sale, so please bag your tickets there. There are going to be, I think, somewhere in the region of over 40 bands. That's about 2,500 players in 4 sections of non-competitive and competitive music making, all the way from those first learners coming through in the Besson Prodige section, all the way up to the Yamaha Championship section, where they've got to play the test piece Neverland by Christopher Bond. It's a fantastic day. It's held at a great venue. Again, the ethos of the competition is brilliant. The volunteers there do a fantastic job, and you could just sit back and marvel at some of the playing there. One other concert, Sunday the 8th of March, the CSD Brass, Cambridge and surrounding district at St Luke's Church in Cambridge. And the reason for picking this is quite simple. They do wonderful programmes.
Really enterprising programme, this, isn't it?
Yeah. You think of this one. They've put on, starting off with music by Rodney Newton, David Lancaster. Then they got John Ireland's Dowland Suite, Albion Treasures by Gavin Somerset, and then Island Heritage by Helen Perkin.
Yeah.
Now, if you do know the story of Helen Perkin and you do know the story of John Ireland, interestingly, they're all in different halves. I don't think it would have been good to put them together, not with their history. But I have to say, Cambridge and surrounding district do a fantastic job. Please, if you're anywhere in that area on Sunday the 8th of March, go along and enjoy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And enjoy that.
And I'm going to throw another one. I'm going to throw another one in you very quickly. 28th of March, and I know you're not there because you're at the National Youth Championships. But on the 28th of March, Tredegar, and I happen to be in Swansea that weekend because I'm visiting family, so I hope to be able to go to the concert. Tredegar are giving a memorial concert for Brian Buckley and his son Richard Buckley, who both of whom sadly passed away in relative close proximity to each other. Brian as recently, I think, as October, Iwan, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
It's on a Saturday afternoon on the 28th at the Dylan Thomas Theatre in Swansea. Well worth attending. I don't know what the programme is yet, Iwan. You might know a little more.
There's some
on that
classics
than me.
on there, including a solo that Brian played himself called The Bubbling Brook. And Debbie Griffiths is going to be playing on that. So that's absolutely fantastic there. So that's all we have there. We can't fit in our 2 LP choices, but I will tell you quickly what they were going to be. It was the English Heritage CDs, because it's all about Edward Elgar. There was 3 recordings that were made by Desford and Foden's band in the mid-80s under Howard Snell. They come in, as I say, there's a triptych of LP recordings. If you can find them on the Polyphonic label, they're well worth seeking out. Elgar does suit brass bands rather well when they were done with good arrangements. They were ones by Bram Wiggins and Bram Gay, etc. Howard Snell himself. So that's well worth putting out. And the last one is 50 years ago, the National Brass Band Festival, the Royal Albert Hall, and it featured Brighouse and Rastrick, CWS Manchester, Gus Kettering, Yorkshire Imperial Metals, Jim Shepherd Versatile Brass, and a 45-foot tall Carol Dawn Reinhardt. She wasn't that size. That's actually superimposed there. But check it out, because Carol Dawn Reinhardt was one heck of a player.
She was a heck of a player. Yeah,
I tell you what, you want to hear her playing Del Steiger's Carnival of Venice. She is a remarkable player. And I say she is because she's 84 years of age. She went on, she's had a fantastic career. And she overcame so many sexist challenges all the way through her career. Just to let you know, one of them said in here, it says, not only has she been praised for her glamour, but also for her ability, tone quality, intonation and expression. Quite an unusual combination. Shame on the person who wrote that. And I can tell you it was a previous editor of the British Bandsman magazine. That was what people had at the time. She overcame it, but a wonderful, wonderful player. If you got this record, check it out. So that's it, Chris. Just the 1 hour and 31 seconds gone. We've covered just about everything. My thanks to you for joining me tonight, and thanks to everybody else who has joined us. Please remember to subscribe to the 4BR YouTube challenge and to make sure that you notify so you don't miss our next review episode, which will be on in a couple of weeks' time after all the fun and games of the regional championships are done and
enjoy those areas in the meantime.
Chris, many thanks indeed, and catch up with you soon. Thanks a lot.
I know.